What a fun retro place. Loads and loads of stuff to see. Obviously lots of, I had that, and I wanted that, including kind of this thing here. That's where I learned to do my terrible hairstyles. And just an absolute smorgasbord of memories of all the best bits of the 70s and 80s.
First ever computer I owned was the ZX Spectrum, which is physically sitting in a cabinet to your left there. Followed shortly by the Commodore VIC-20 and then on to the 64. The Auric 1 was another one I owned. I had a Dragon for a brief period, the Dragon 32. And ended the 80s with the Amiga 500 and several other computers in between there as well. We used to sit around with books trying to program them. So there was two, I can't remember the word, but one was battle games and I think one was space games, and you just had page after page of writing the code in. And the Spectrum obviously was quite difficult with the rubber keyboard and everything. And we would just spend hours writing this code in, or we'd end up playing like Daley Thompson's Decathlon or whatever like that. And plenty of other games. But yeah, going back to the coding, like typical like anybody else, you get to the end of the code, hit go, and it just didn't happen. So then you spent another few hours going through looking for a comma, a full stop or whatever to get it running. And I've always been minor programming. I do a lot of CAD designing and everything as well, so we do all our own 3D printing. So if there's something wrong within the computer that we can fix, it's plastic or whatever, or any other item within the museum, so we can kind of save it and bring it back to restore life, and we'll design it in 3D printing to sort it. On, I think it was a Commodore 64, there was a three-dimensional program that you could actually make 3D worlds with it, and I've forgotten what it has been so long ago. And I think it was that set me off. And from then onwards, I always had a fascination of being able to create items that was like virtual worlds or 3D. So I've done it with headsets and everything, and created whole 80s diners and all sorts to put in.
The BBC Micro was the first computers to go into junior schools. The first ones I had, I was probably about 10-year-old when they came into our school, and the teachers weren't very competent on these machines because they hadn't been trained on them. So us as kids just played a lot of games, and one of the games we played was called Granny's Garden, and anybody who played that game when they were 10-year-old will tell you how scary that game was. It was a question and answer game, yes or no, and even as a child, some of the questions are quite tricky, so generally nobody ever got to the end of Granny's Garden. But when you had completed your level, or when you got basically the wrong answer, the witch would come back out of the screen at you, and his big horrible face, and I think she said something like, "Oh, I have got you now," or something. Stuff of nightmares. We had a gentleman and his son in, and I think the son would be about 13 or 14, and he was really into the old retro computers. A lot of the children come in and it's alien to them because they're so used to just a mobile phone and a screen. But yeah, it's nice to see the youngsters when they are getting involved with the old tech. I think because we obviously had the advantage that we kind of seen the computing all the way through, whereas the kids these days, they see the internet and they don't always see what goes into making programs like we did, because we had to program these computers and we'd put all the code and everything in, and even if you were there for half an hour something would go wrong, it's like, oh. But even so, you're still learning at the time. And I think the kids, they come in and they see the old computers, and to them, they always look prehistoric, I suppose. But it's very important that they do learn, because such as the BBC computer, the processing chip in that is what you've got in your mobile phone today. So if we didn't have those, you wouldn't have the technology we've got today.
You get all kinds of emotions, because a lot of people come in, it's their history, and they've forgotten a lot of items, and then all of a sudden it just hits them. They see something that brings back a memory, maybe of even their parents, so they get quite emotional as well. To other people, total elation of, I had this, I had that, always wanted that, and it just brings back good memories for them. So, most people leave here. Somebody described it as therapy and said you should actually have this as a place for therapy, because it just makes them go out feeling so good. There was a gentleman probably about a week and a half ago. He was a programmer for Commodore and everything, started at the age of 14 and went on to work for all the big companies and everything.
These computers might be old, going back to the early 80s, but for many of us they started a career. Certainly they started mine, and some quite a few years later, it's still about writing. It's still about using the technical skills that maybe we started learning back in the day.